Welcome, crew. This is the Voices of Titanic podcast, episode 14, and I'm your host, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today. I was watching this comedian show his wife the 1997 Titanic film, and he pauses constantly to tell her these little facts and Easter eggs about the history of the ship. It's really funny, but one of them was about this passenger I'm going to tell you about today. I couldn't believe this was a true story. Lo and behold, I looked it up. It was. It's a bit lighter compared to our other episodes, and I don't know if humorous is the right word, but maybe amusing. It's certainly an interesting decision. One cannot deny that, and I found it a little amusing, but we will get to that later. This week, we will be discussing Bridget Delia McDermott. Bridget was born March 8th, 1895 in County Mayo, Ireland, to parents Michael McDermott and Bridget Rowland. County Mayo is located in Western Ireland, and it's known for being the third largest county in the whole country, with the longest coastline and highest sea cliffs. This county is also said to be a spiritual location. Ireland's national saint, St. Patrick, was said to have spent a lot of time there. During the time of Bridget's birth, the county was part of a national movement to win rights for poor farmers in Ireland. This became known as the, quote, Lands War. And interestingly enough, it is said that the term to boycott stems from this period of unrest in the country, which was inspired by a very unpopular English landlord by the name of Charles Boycott. Circling back to the McDermotts, young Bridget attended the Bonniconlon National School, a Catholic school for girls, in 1891, which had just opened a year prior at the age of 10. In the 1901 census, we find Bridget living with her parents, her older sister Mary, and her older brother Thomas. Her occupation was listed as a farmer's daughter. This term was used when adult children performed unpaid labor at home or on the farm. As of April 2nd, 1911, Bridget still lived at home with her parents and her brother Thomas in Knockfernot. She continued to be recorded as a farmer's daughter and was single at the time. Come March of 1912, Bridget booked passage on the Titanic with travel agent Thomas Durkin of Castlebar. Her plan was to move to America and see her cousin on Henrietta Street in St. Louis, Missouri, a Mrs. Cecilia Sison. I'm not sure what spurred this move to America. I couldn't find that anywhere, but I'm guessing it was a chance at a new life, a new opportunity. But Bridget purchased a ticket in third class, ticket number 330932, for £7, 15 shillings and 8 pence. Now, as she prepared for this exciting journey to America, she went to the town of Crossmolina to purchase new clothes, a girl after my own heart. Who doesn't love a new wardrobe? One of her newest attained items was a fashionable new hat. Bridget's mother had told her that one didn't need money to be a lady and that she should arrive in New York wearing her hat and her gloves. This is important, I promise. We will come back to this in a little bit. After the sinking, Bridget's niece alleged in an interview that her aunt had experienced an unusual encounter in Locherdon village with a, quote, mysterious man in black. According to the niece, this happened the evening before Bridget was to board the Titanic in Queenstown, Ireland. Her niece says, quote, she was in Locherdon with friends when suddenly a hand tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and there was a little man there whom she thought was a traveler. My aunt went to give the man a few pennies and he told her he knew she was going on a long journey. Before disappearing, the man had left Bridget with these words, "There will be a tragedy, but you will be saved," end quote. It was said that Bridget had mentioned this strange man in black to her friends, but they claimed to have seen no one by that description. Now, if this story is true, I think it's fair to say that Bridget McDermott probably boarded the ship with some trepidation on April 11th, 1912. Boarding the ship in Queenstown with Bridget were 13 other people from her small county. Tragically, 11 of them would ultimately perish. While we don't have information on her experience during the short journey, we have quite a story about her night on April 14th. Bridget shared a third-class cabin with Mary Canavan. During the night of the impact, they were in bed and they heard a loud bang and felt a shudder. Bridget, understandably alarmed by the sound, she peeked her head out the door and she asked a member of the crew what was wrong. She was told nothing was the matter and that she should go back to sleep. Both women obviously sensed something was amiss as they heard commotion amongst the crew outside their door. So approximately 10 minutes later, a crew member knocked on the door, told them to put on their life belts and immediately get to the deck. Bridget asked if there was time to put on their clothes. They were told that no, there was not time. So these women were in a hurry. They quickly put on coats over their pajamas. They headed to the deck. While Mary and Bridget waited in line for a lifeboat, Bridget was overcome by the cold night. She reached into her pocket to put on her gloves, and in that moment, according to an article from the Irish Independent, she remembered her mother's words to her: "A lady is not a lady without her hat and her gloves." Now, I've seen two different accounts. Bridget either climbed out of the boat she was placed into, or she left her place in line, but either way, Bridget left her chance of rescue and survival to retrieve her brand spanking new hat. Returning to her cabin, people were panicking. Despite this, she grabbed her hat. She tried to persuade some friends to come with her. Allegedly, they hid in the bathroom and refused to come with her. Although Bridget retrieved her new accessory, she did find herself trapped with the main staircase being blocked at the time. With a amazing magical stroke of luck, a group of men ran by and said to come along with them. Apparently, these young men knew of a back staircase because they had been using it to spy on the upper decks. On deck once again, Bridget found herself at the back of the line of passengers waiting for a lifeboat. Now, to get into lifeboat 13 was no easy feat. According to Bridget's niece, Bridget had to jump 15 feet from a rope ladder into the lifeboat. Her niece admits that getting the hat was, quote, perhaps a foolish thing to do, but luckily she managed to get a place in a boat, end quote. Bridget, safe on the decks of the Carpathia hours later, tried to find her friend and cabin mate Mary Canavan, and unfortunately, Mary did not survive. Less than 2 weeks later, on April 25th, Bridget McDermott received a $150 payment from the Women's Relief Committee, a group that was formed in New York to provide aid to survivors. According to author Sinan Maloney, who wrote the book The Irish Aboard the Titanic, Bridget never made it to her intended destination of St. Louis. Staying on the East Coast, she moved from New York to New Jersey and married John Joseph Lynch, a World War I vet from Galway, Ireland. I couldn't locate any record of their marriage, but it had to have happened sometime between January of 1920, when the census was recorded, and then their daughter's birthday, because in the 1920 census, John is listed as single, but their daughter Julia Lynch was born September 24th, 1921. So that leaves us with a pretty small window of time for their marriage to occur. Daughter Margaret was born sometime in 1923, and then lastly, son Thomas was born March 12th, 1925. Looking at the 1930 census, the family is living together at Union Street in New Jersey. Husband John worked as a laborer for the railroad while Bridget took care of the home. In the home with them were two male McDermotts. I believe one of them was Bridget's brother, Thomas. During the next two census recordings, not much had changed. The family continued to live on Union Street, and John later became a foreman at the railroad company. On November 3rd, 1959, Bridget Lynch passed away at the age of 64, survived by her husband, children, and 10 grandchildren. Family and friends were invited to her service that was held at St. Patrick's Church. Her husband, John, died a few years later during the fall of 1963. As for her children, daughter Julia married John Danning in 1946. Danning was a World War I and World War II veteran born in New York, but of Polish descent. They had a daughter, Margaret, born in 1948. In 1950, the family lived in an apartment on Randolph Avenue where Julia kept house and took care of their daughter, and John worked as a laborer for a construction company. A son, John, was born later that same year. He tragically died only 24 years later, but I couldn't find a reason for his death. Another daughter was born, Patricia, in the fall of 1958. Bridget's daughter, Julia, became a nurse and worked at Meadowview Hospital before retiring. She lived in Belmar, New Jersey, and then later moved to Las Vegas 6 years prior to her death. She passed away at 85 years old on May 17, 2007, and she was survived by her daughters, Margaret, known as Peggy, and Patricia, as well as 5 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. I found very little information on Bridget's daughter, Margaret, so it's a little confusing. There was a a sister Margaret and a niece named Margaret. But Bridget's daughter Margaret did not have a lot of information, but she did marry James Hughes in 1945, and they had a daughter, Mary Ann, in 1948. As much as I tried, I couldn't find anything on the family after that. Bridget's son Thomas was a plasterer and had joined the Brotherhood of Plasterers and Bricklayers Local 4 chapter in Fairfield, and he was in this job for an impressive 42 years before retiring. In June 1950, he married Lily Austin, also of New Jersey. Thomas was a Navy veteran of World War II. His draft registration card for the Korean War states that he was 6 feet, 1 inch tall, 160 pounds, and had a light complexion with blue eyes and brown hair. It says his employer was his brother-in-law, James Hughes, his sister Margaret's husband. Thomas and Lily had 4 children: Kathleen, Thomas Jr., Kevin, and James. Thomas lived in Garwood, New Jersey for 12 years prior to his death on August 17, 2005 at 80 years old. He was survived by his wife, children, and 7 grandchildren. So all of Bridget's children had quite a few grandchildren, and some even had great-grandchildren, which is pretty amazing. Where to even start with Bridget? She's so cute. As always, I will put pictures up on the Voices of Titanic podcast. That's the name of the page. She is so cute, and her journey on that night of the sinking sounds completely fictional. I don't know what to think about her decision that night. She risked her life to grab her new hat. I mean, could you even imagine if this turned out completely different for her? She is extremely lucky to have survived. Take a second to think about it. She left the safety of the lifeboats on deck, went all the way back down to 3rd class. She went to her cabin, got what she came for, came all the way back up. She is incredibly fortunate that she didn't get lost, she didn't get trapped, and she didn't miss a chance on another lifeboat. And the fact that she jumped into or out of the boat, depending on which version you read, you can't deny that Bridget was determined. I also can't tell if Bridget is just a storyteller. I really don't know what to make of the whole thing. But in an obituary article in the Jersey Journal, it says that Bridget wasn't worried when she came up on deck. She's quoted as saying, "I guess I was too young to become concerned." Bridget was 17 at the time. We could possibly attribute this to her being a teenager, and if this was early on in the sinking, it wasn't clear to a lot of people that there was any imminent danger. But times were different back then, so I'm unsure if being a teenager would be the same as being a teenager today. It's totally plausible, too, that as a 3rd-class Irish woman, she spent a lot of money on her new wardrobe, and the hat was too valuable for her to lose. Her daughter Julia later said, quote, "She rarely spoke of her experience aboard the Titanic, except for having left a lifeboat to go back and retrieve her new hat. Hats being what they were in those days, it was no doubt a huge expenditure for her family, and it was a going-away gift. Otherwise, I believe the ordeal was so traumatic that she closed her mind to it." End quote. Whatever the reason, Bridget is undeniably one of the luckiest people, and I hope she kept that hat because I think it brought her some serious good luck. I'm really thankful that she survived, and no judgment on her for going back and getting her gift. It's just personally a very wild and interesting tale. I think it's one of those perfect situations where you have to wonder, would I do this? Would I react the same way? Would I go back for something valuable and precious to me? Or would I immediately leave the ship with no thought of any of my possessions? God forbid we ever have to know, but it's very clear that regardless of her actions early on in the night, she was traumatized by the experience and didn't like talking about it. When we look at the statistic of Bridget being one of only 3 people from her county that lived that night, when you consider that and the fact that she was a 3rd-class immigrant, her luck becomes even greater. Julia remembers her mother as a quiet homebody and housewife who was devoted to her family. She was a devout Catholic and attended daily mass and used her rosary nightly. Her only vice was said to be a weekly euchre game with her friends. Apparently, euchre is a trick-taking card game. I'd never heard of it before. I even had to look up how to pronounce it because the spelling is so odd. But it's really adorable imagining Bridget playing a card game with her friends. Despite making such an interesting and thought-provoking decision, I don't think Bridget took life for granted. I think she knew how fortunate she was to survive. She was a dedicated mother and wife, was part of her religious community, and she raised 3 children who then gave her many more grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. She sounded like a happy and peaceful person. And that makes me wonder, how about you? Would you go back to your cabin and get something valuable to you? And what might that be? For me, it would be my dog, but I think I would have tried to sneak him into a lifeboat to begin with, so I'm not sure what my answer would be if I had to choose something else. But it really is a question that makes you sit back and think, if you are in this emergency situation, or even if you don't know that there's danger and you're being told to follow this safety protocol, do you just follow the rules and get into a boat for safety, or do you go back and get something that you're afraid of losing? It's a really interesting thing to think about. Let's pause and have a moment of silence for the hundreds of lives that were lost that night, including the Irish passengers who did not make it. Let's also pay our respects to survivor Bridget Delia McDermott and what she went through that night. Thank you, crew, for joining me in today's episode. As we disembark, I wish you happiness, love, and peace. Take care, and I'll see you next time on the Voices of Titanic.